sit next to Donald. Yeah.
Okay.
Donald, can I see your book? Ooh.
Well, haven't you got a book? All right.
Yeah.
Oh, you wait.
I wish I did. That would be cool.
You approached this one.
No.
Maybe you're right.
Front row center.
I was thinking about this the other day. I think like 3, yeah. Well, did you ever meet Chris Stewart? He used to teach me, and then he moved to Australia, and I was really upset. And I kicked up a fuss, and I was tantrum about it, and he was like, don't worry, I'm going to give you a really, really good tutor. And he gave me
How much? When you said you had a tantrum, did he have to come back?
Yeah, from Australia, yeah.
Evening. Thank you very much for coming tonight to this event. It's the first of a series that we're doing with the World Photography Organisation. Can I ask you please to switch off your phones or turn them to silent? And during the Q&A, if you can wait for the microphone for the benefit of our online audience. I'm just going to pass you over to Astrid Merguet, who I'm very grateful to for organising this event. She's from the World Photography Organisation. She's the creative director, and she'll tell you a little bit more about this PhotoTALK.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Today's talk is going to be the very first in a series that we've just launched, and we are hoping to do one of these every month in a different city around the world with a different subject and different panel, different audience, but hopefully everybody will always be able to log on online on our website to see the actual talks happening. The idea of this is that it's a conversation with everyone involved. We're hoping to be hearing comments and questions, even answers from the audience, as well as our Facebook and Twitter audience, which is right now sending in questions, sending in comments. We really don't want this to be a panel of experts that's talking at you, and it's contained in a room where nobody else can be participating in it, and it ends here in the room and then never is talked about again. So the idea about this is that it is that global discussion where everybody can learn and everybody can feed into it, and hopefully it'll continue to go online and just die out naturally rather than just stopping here when this is over. So Stu Smith is going to be hosting tonight. He's going to be moderating. He is an extraordinary publisher, has been in the business for many, many years, and concentrates mostly on photography books, but also does a lot of other things, which he hopefully will tell you about a bit as well. We'll talk a little bit about book publishing and how to fund your books in this discussion as well. So Stuart, over to you.
Thank you, Astrid. I have a quick question. If I'm going to hand questions to them, do I hand them my mic? Because I've got a cough, and if I cough on this, then people we have a separate one. Because I don't want people to get ill, because I was in bed for the last 2 days, and Astrid was panicking about having to do the moderating. But like a trooper that I am, I came. And also, I'm not going to sit here because I feel uncomfortable just sitting, so I'm going to be moving around a bit like a compere, so it's going to be a bit more movable. So I'll quickly just say that I design a lot of photography books, and I help edit photographers with their work. And photographers come to me with a lot of questions, and the main one is, how can I get this published? So I know we're talking about funding, and that'll be one of the questions that we can talk about. But what we'll do, first of all, is I'm going to introduce you to the 3 people we have up here, 3 photographers, and they're going to talk about, they're going to show their work very quick, 5-minute thing. And then, as Astrid said, we're going to open this up, so it's not us sitting up here telling you lot. We'll welcome other people to comment and also ask questions. The way this is going to work. And, if it's good and quick, we might be able to get home to see if Helen gets any more stars. So what I'll do, that was a reference, by the way, because I don't have a telly. What I'm going to do is start with, I'm just going to ask one quick question to Astrid again. Hold on. So there we are. You might have heard that. I'm going to start with Donald. Donald he trained as an architect. I don't know why he stopped that, but that's another question. So he's a member. Donald, you're a member of Seven.
Yep.
Seven, which is an agency, and I'm reading
That's all
this.
you need to know.
Well, that's his work has appeared in publications like New York Times and Stern, and he's worked for NGOs and other stuff. And he's published. How many books have you published there, Donald?
2.
2. Thank you. So I'm now going to pass you, and Donald's going to just show a quick slideshow of his stuff, and then we'll go on to Laura, and then we'll go on to Carol, and then we'll open up for questions.
I think you're going to be stuck on my name.
This is Donald Webber, by the way, as you see. 7 photographer.
Backwards.
Am I blocking it?
Photographers aren't necessarily technologically that great, so Donald is
I
having
can
trouble.
just, well, actually, to get around this was planned.
Yes.
My book is for sale for £25. Oh, damn.
Put
If you
the
want to
book
see
away, Donald.
photographs, you can buy the book afterwards. I'm glad to sell it. I don't know which button I'm pressing here, but there we go. Okay, we got it. I'm just going to show some pictures. I just thought it's a good idea to look at pictures while somebody's talking rather than a blank screen. So Stuart did mention that I work, sometimes for New York Times Magazine and Stern and these other publications and such, but what he really should have said was, which we talked about earlier, was...
I forgot about that, sorry.
Say it.
I
Oh, you
gone
totally
blank. I don't know what we talked about.
I actually don't do many assignments, and I
That
try
was
to
it,
keep
yeah.
it that way, because I feel that when I do assignments, it takes away from what I need to be doing or what I want to be doing. I guess I'm sort of selfish in that way. So for me, the assignments is just a way to every now and then do something, so to speak, but I don't actively court it. What I'm looking to do is to do my own work in my own time, in my own manner. So how am I going to do that? Because I don't come from a wealthy family at all. I need to find money. So for me, it's become grants and sort of outside funding and such. So this book here, Interrogations, this was about a 7-year project that was completely self-financed. I think maybe there's one assignment that I got to, I don't know, fly me somewhere. But so I don't really use assignments as a way to make any money. I kind of use assignments as a way just to sort of take me to a place that I normally wouldn't be. And this thing is, there we go. I'll sit like this all night. But so for me, the idea, the numbers that I like is the number 0. I always keep 0 in my mind. And the 0 for me is, again, the number of assignments that I really like to do that earn me an income. I've managed to, well, I should also mention that I am Canadian, and just in a way being British, we have a great government funding of the arts. I don't know what the British Council is like anymore, but in Canada we actually have a pretty solid funding system for the arts. But on top of that, it's also about sort of recognizing what your work is about and approaching people who you think might have similar goals in mind with the work. So instead of waiting or searching online through Google to say, this is a foundation that's looking for X, Y, and Z pictures, I usually look at my photographs and I say, well, my work is about, in this case, you could say in my book, Interrogations, is about, political authority, the idea, human rights abuses, etc. So why don't I approach certain organizations that also deal with this? For instance, in Canada, we have the Imperial War Museum, which is in Winnipeg. So I approached them a few years ago to talk about doing something. It didn't lead anywhere, but at least, it's an idea that I had in my mind that I need to take the work that I've made and go forward with it and tell people that this is interesting work and it actually fits within your mandate as an institution, a foundation, a museum, whatever it should be. But one of the other things I like to do is with grants is that it's turned me into a writer. I certainly would never call myself a writer, but by being a writer, it's forced me to articulate my ideas in a stronger way. And it's sort of like learning a second language. I always like to say that I speak a beautiful old Russian with Dostoevsky. We talk philosophy. But when I go to a restaurant and I actually order something, I sound like a child. And it's the same thing photographically for me. I have wonderful ideas in my head. The only way I can articulate the ideas in my head is when I start to try to write about it. And writing actually allows you an understanding and, as I said, an articulation of an idea. So it can kind of go with the proverbial elevator. You know, if you're stuck in an elevator, what are you going to say to that person when they ask you, "So, Don, what are you working on now?" Well, you know, I was doing this project, and it's about these kind of, you know, like guys and their workers. That's not very interesting. But if I'm able to say exactly what I'm doing, not only does it allow me to get a grant or apply to a fund, but it also allows me to contact a magazine or an institution, a gallerist. It's what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it, and this is frankly why you should be giving me money to go do it. So grants has not only allowed me, yes, to get money to be able to do the work that I want to do, but it's more importantly, I think, articulated the ideas that I want to do as a photographer. So at any time I can approach, I can talk about, I can explain, and when I do see a deadline on May 15th, generally I can just open up my computer and I've got, you know, a few things that I'm constantly working on. So in a way, a great thing with grants and funding is that it forces you, you have a deadline to go do something. I'm a horrible procrastinator. Probably a lot of photographers are terrible at procrastinating. So for me, a deadline is a way to go make something. There's two things I'm working on right now, which I don't know if I would actually be working on them if I didn't have a deadline, if I knew that this grant wasn't coming up or this fellowship wasn't coming up. So that has allowed me to create a system, I guess you could say, which is highly organized. And that has allowed me the freedom to think about my own ideas instead of waiting for other people to tell me what ideas I should be working on.
That's you over then, is it, Donald?
That's my overview.
Okay.
That was 5 minutes, right?
That was very good. That was very quick and succinct. I like that.
Oh, wait.
Oh, hang on.
Shoot. I got to advance really quickly. There's one last slide. Maybe
Oh,
we can
we've got to get the
it later.
last slide in. This is very important.
This
No-
one.
Oh,
There we
the,
go.
the advertising. Oh, it's
The
not.
advertising.
And you've missed the URL. Never
No.
mind, Donald. We'll put that in
blew it.
later.
Damn.
That was
Oh, well.
to tell you about Donald's course. Because the thing I forgot to mention was Donald runs a grant writing workshop, Learn to Obtain Funding. So he wasn't going to tell us any secrets because, of course, the idea is that you go to the funding course and you learn the secrets. But we will, in the course of this evening, because Astrid said I have to do this, we will get at least one secret from you, Donald,
Sure.
that for free, that we can, and then that's a little taster before we go to your course and learn about how to write a grant.
I'm happy to share, and that's kind of, I think, the whole point of a lot of this is just because I tell you, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Everybody has to find their own way to do something, and that's when success comes, is because you know what you want to do and the way that you need to go do it. I found what works for me. Now you need to go out and find out what works for you. And as soon as you're honest and genuine about what it is that you need to do and want to go do, the things start flowing in. You'll be recognized for it.
And I think that really comes, one of the main things that it starts with is I did a teaching course with this photographer as a Magnum photographer, and he turned to all the students and he said, none of you will get anywhere because you're all so darn lazy. And that's very, not a very nice thing to hear, but the trouble is, if you want a grant, you really have to work at getting the grant. And grants are designed in a way that at page 2, if you haven't gone past page 2 to fill in 15 pages worth of the grant application, then obviously you're not going to get the grant. So most people want something very easy and quick. And what you'll find is with all the photographers up here and everybody that gets the grants is it takes a long time and a lot of patience and a lot of knocking to get the money in order to do the project. Anyway, I'm now going to go on to the lady next to me here, Laura Pannock. Did I say that correctly? Yeah. Laura is a London-based photographer, which actually doesn't say much, really. It's just a bit. The bit I read off was that Laura says that time, trust, and understanding is the key to portraying subjects truthfully. And again, what you'll find with the photographers here is that they spend a lot of time getting to take the pictures. So they don't just go somewhere and snap away and take pictures and then leave. They get to know their subjects, and that means they can get moments and pictures that people won't get if they just rush in and rush out. And it's that time that we take in order to take pictures that means that we get something different and special, which I have looked at your pictures and I think they're quite simple in the way that it's just a portrait, but somehow you've captured something in somebody that I just think is different than a lot of other photographers, which is, I think, is why you're doing very well at things at the moment. Anyway, Laura, I've waffled a bit, and yes, all right. I'm going to pass on to you to talk about your a bit.
Okay. Hi. Oh, yeah. There we go. Is this working? Yeah.
It is.
Mine's actually, like, I was just thinking about what you were saying, Donald, and I guess I'm a little bit different. I've got a few different projects that I was just going to whip through. I don't actually kind of have a list of grants or funding applications and then kind of aim for them. I'm kind of the opposite. I start projects, realise that I don't have any money, and then when I see something pop up and it applies to me, then I'll put in an application. But I guess that's probably not the right way to do it. A lot of my projects, well, all of my projects are self-funded unless they're from a commission. This was actually, I was very fortunate. Save the Children approached me and I did a project on poverty in the UK, and I worked alongside a number of other photographers. And a project like that is so unique that you're given you know, a small amount of funding to buy some film, and then you have the access and the support of a charity to go alongside it. And I found it a really inspiring way of working because when I'm working on particular issues, for me, actually, my main priority is not necessarily funding, it's actually my access. And that's why I collaborate with charities, with organisations, and sometimes with editorials. Because when you're working with sensitive people, it's important to know that you're not bearing all of the responsibility. Personally, I just feel anyway. So with this project, I needed to know that the people that were involved were looked after as well. The rest of my projects, I kind of divide my time in loads of different ways, and my ideas and my projects don't necessarily come before I get the funding. Sometimes they start as inspiration from a commission, or sometimes I'll have an idea and then I'll approach an editorial or an application for a grant, and I'll go forward with it in that way. So, for example, this second one, I was doing an assignment for the Saturday Telegraph magazine, and they rang me up and they said, hey, do you want to go to Ghana and, sorry, I think it's wrong format, and shoot a story on children in Ghana that are being killed for being witches and spirit children. And for me, I was like, wow, this sounds incredible, and I was out there with an amazing writer. So the story kind of landed upon me, and it was all sorted out, it was all organised, it was, you know, a dream. And then within that, I actually kind of discovered other stories. Like, for example, I discovered this gold mine, and I asked the writer if we could go back on a number of occasions and meet the children that had fled to this gold mine that had kind of grown up out of nowhere. So some of my stories kind of come the other way. This one was a bit different. From that, I kind of realised that it would be a good idea to approach charities and say to them, you work with a group of people, I don't have the money to go somewhere. If you can pay for me to go somewhere, I'll shoot an A roll for you and a B roll for me. So I'll photograph whatever you need for your annual report, your website, all that kind of jazz. And then in return, I have a story that I'd really like to do. Would you support me on this? So I went out to Ukraine and I shot a story on babushkas with World Jewish Relief. And I shot a huge amount of material for them, and then in exchange they supported me with contacts and allowed me to enter the lives of families and spend a week with some families out there as well. I feel like I'm ranting. Okay, and then also working with major charities like Oxfam International. I was actually really surprised working with major charities. I thought that I would kind of, if they were paying me a certain amount of money, like with an assignment, I felt that I would almost just have to shoot whatever they point at, and I wouldn't have any creative control. And the problem, I think, what Donna was saying as well, is that with kind of funded work or commissioned work, there's an obligation to your client, and your creative thoughts and your ideas and the way that you shoot can be hindered by somebody else's needs. So I was very lucky when I worked with Oxfam, because I kind of said to them, I don't just want to go in and just shoot whatever you want, let's come up with an idea. So we came up with an idea to shoot something that everybody was shooting, which was returnees to South Sudan when it gained its independence. And I said to them, I'd quite like to focus on the people returning from New York and Canada and Australia, and I wanted to know why somebody living in Islington in a nice flat would mission it all the way back to South Sudan and live in squalor. So we took that as part of the story, and then whilst we were out there, we noticed that all the people returning from the north of Sudan were actually trading in beds. And I thought this was a really nice metaphor for the way of home. And it's kind of like all I wanted to do personally was just sleep in my own bed. So I photographed all the northern returnees on their beds at home. And then we shot another story out there on female education. And I guess that, like, with regards to funding, like, I knew they were funding my trip, so I really wanted to take advantage of it, and I really just wanted to go out there and work with them and find more stories. And I think that, like, when you're given that access, when you're given that funding, you kind of just have to run with it and be like, wow, I'm out here, I just have to find everything. So we found the only vocational school in South Sudan for women, and then did a bit with that. Oh God, that's just gone wrong. So that was the babushkas, the World Jewish Relief. Ukraine. And then lastly, a huge amount of my time is just dedicated to personal work. And all of my personal work is just self-funded. I apply for grants when and as I can, but I just kind of do photography as work. So I'll shoot, events, I'll shoot editorials, I'll kind of do the opposite, unfortunately. And just, I really enjoy editorial, I enjoy assignments, and from the money that I make, I just spend on film and then pursue personal projects. Because I just want to kind of work on things at my own pace and not feel a pressure and not feel any obligation. And I want to get to know my subjects and, yeah. So this was a project that I did for 3 years on young British naturists. Probably can't see the image that well on that one. I don't know, I might leave it out there just for now.
Thanks, Laura. So the last person, I don't know why I'm opening this piece of paper because I know Carol, but I'll open it anyway. Carol, I found this kind of interesting, and I think I'm going to tell people. She was the creative, I have to read this out because it's actually quite a long title. She was the creative vice president for worldwide marketing, responsible for communication, advertising, and product development for Chanel for 15 years. So that was Carol's previous job. And about 12 years ago, she stopped and did a course, I think, was it Westminster or Central St. Martin's in photography. And I think in the last 6 years, she's been doing projects around age-related projects and orphan children in South Africa. And these are self-funded projects that she goes and sources herself and goes on her own. Instead of in the previous life that she did, I sort of expected that she might be a lady who lunched and just wouldn't bother. But of course, Carol has got determination, is doing this very interesting and photography that she does now. So after 6 years, Carol now is starting to get NGOs and charities that are seeing what she's done. And they're now being able to, or they fund her, and she's now starting to get money to help her do the projects that she funded herself. So again, the point that I made earlier was that you sort of have to go out and start doing it yourself first, and things start to happen. You just can't expect the money to come to you, and you can, because you've got a bit of an idea, and it might be quite a good one. So I'm going to pass over to Carol to tell you a little bit.
All right, you're absolutely right. I used to have another career, another life, and I was very privileged to be successful in what I was doing, and I wanted to return to my roots of what my initial education was about, where I had wanted to be in the U.S. Diplomatic Corps. But sadly, I was thrown out because I was campaigning against the war in Vietnam and got arrested, and they told me they didn't think I quite agreed with the government's point of view. And when I decided to leave the beauty, fragrance, fashion industry, I was very precise and very sharp in what I wanted to do. I always had a passion for photography, a very deep passion. I always photographed and would write along with it, which I think what Donald was saying is really important. You have to be able to articulate and express an idea so that you can communicate with someone as to what you're trying to achieve. And so I went to St. Martin's and did a foundation course and then went on for a master program. And everyone said, well, you're going to be doing fashion. I said, no, I'm going to be doing humanitarian issues and things that I think are important to bring it to the public, to give a voice for the voiceless. And I started out with a personal project, just as a working title called Angels at the Edge of Darkness. And it's about women managing the agony of AIDS in Africa. And from that, a variety of different stories have evolved into it. But the first thing I did was actually, coming from a marketing background, was actually define, to express exactly why Angels of Darkness. What is the rationale behind it? Why would someone be interested in reading those stories? Hasn't AIDS been cured? And so on. And one of the things that struck me is that for all the books and things that have been written about HIV/AIDS, and specifically photographically, it's mostly men that have engaged in that. Very few women have actually photographed people living in the developing worlds that are managing the agony of AIDS, and all the issues associated with HIV/AIDS, from testing to mother-to-child prevention to the orphans that are left behind and so on. And I had done a small project for the Wildlife Association out of New York on building a tourist trade in Rwanda, and I had met someone because I did a workshop at the Kigali University. I said, look, I need someone to help me get started. Access is the most important thing. And even though I wrote to every single charity here in the UK, irrespective of this broad New York accent, anyone that knows me, I've been living here my entire adult life, which is 30 years. They all said, well, who is she? And I'm nobody important. So I knew I was going to have fund it, but the most important thing was to have access. So that's how I got started. I went out to Rwanda with someone that was an instructor at Kigali University, and that was my first start. I had in my mind, maybe quite arrogantly, that I was going to do a kind of story that W. Gene Smith would do, to be able to photograph one family, really get to know a family. And one was dedicated, that dealt with HIV/AIDS, that started small associations, the issues about women that get raped and so on. And from that, a variety of different stories have evolved over that time. It's from these stories where I actually write an essay about what is happening in the region, or what's happening to a particular sub-target group, that I had been able to leverage now, where I also, with Laura, both of us did the project for Save the Children. We had different families, and each of us were virtually engaged with these families for almost a year, which was a very, very long time.
Not me.
I was. And I now, I work for Save the Children. I work for UNICEF. I've just done a major project for International Alert about the aftermath of war in Rwanda. But I would not have been able to get those commissions, which allows me further access to the kind of work that I want to make, which are really an adjunct to the personal projects, without having a portfolio of work showing and illustrating that I'm prepared to bust my ass to go out there and work hard, to live in the trenches, to eat a raw snake or whatever required, and particularly anorexic chicken, and to work hard, because it's a 24/7 job. This is not I think I'll get up at 7 and maybe I'll finish up at 5 and so on. You go into the field, and I just don't go in for 24 hours. I go in usually for 3 weeks, 5 weeks at a time, in and out, which gives you a chance to build a trust and a relationship with people, which is essential in order to be able to get the intimate kind of imagery that you would want to do without exploiting the people. For me, the integrity and telling the truth is the most important thing that I can possibly do. But it's been through these stories that I've been able to show to NGOs and people to apply for grants and awards that have allowed me to gain the money to continue the kind of work that I want to pursue. So we can just run through a few. I don't even know any of these pictures.
I think they've all been running while you've been talking.
Okay. This was a story basically about when rape is a weapon of war, and the agony that these people have to manage, because it is a very targeted weapon that is now not just, it's been used for thousands of years for sure, but certainly the barbarism of rape and how it's being used and continues to be used, where it completely dismantles a woman's sense of self, who she is. I recently photographed one woman, said very simply, you have an emptiness inside of you that never goes away. The humiliation is unbearable, and you have to live with that every single day of your life. And then on top of that, many of the men that raped the women, particularly during the Rwandan war, who were HIV positive, were inflicting the virus upon the women and didn't slaughter them because what they had said, at least what the women were telling me, is that we want to poison your body and have a slow death from the HIV/AIDS. And that's quite a statement to come back. But how I present things, this is a very simple thing to put together by anyone. I may select one picture. This is Francoise, and I'll do an introduction about why the rationale of the essay. I think it's really important to be able to write very effectively exactly what the story is about. And that way, if you're sending this out, I just do a PDF that has the introduction, and then it will have small captions behind it and a run of the pictures. If you're sending it to feature editors or you're sending it off to NGOs or applying for a grant, it means that you have spent some time thinking about the basis of interest of why someone would want to support the kind of stories that you're doing. So that was just called Rape as a Weapon of War, the Forgotten Women of Genocide. And the next one, just very quickly, if we had run through all of those pictures. What I did with each of these women, very simply, just so you get an idea, this is a direct translation of what they were telling me and expressing. And I think it's really important to get the stories, because although the pictures may be emotive or not, when you have the narrative and the testimony behind it, it adds another level of authority and credibility, and the time it takes to do these pictures. And I spend a lot of time with these women. I don't pick up my camera until everybody is comfortable. I always tell everyone, if you feel uncomfortable and you want my camera to be put down, I'll put it down. If there are questions that I ask that you find too embarrassing or too painful to respond to, I understand. I'm not here to push you over the cliff, and I'm not. And also to provide a dignity for these women. They have gone through hell, the kind of hell none of us really understand unless we had actually been there. And so it's important to provide that dignity. And I've made various trips, and my last trip that I was there, they were all under the ARVs, the antiretroviral treatment, and I said, I'd love to photograph you, because I use black and white film quite a lot. It's one of my favorite mediums, because I think it strips away peripheral information. And I shot them I photographed them in the end using a mid-format camera, a bit more formalized, because my style is generally reportage in color, and that's the reason there's color on the last page. And on the last page also is a local NGO that does wonderful things for these women, where it was also an appeal, because I had sent this out to feature editors. That's for that.
Have you finished? Are you going to do a bit more?
I'm finished talking, unless you want to.
Oh, no, I didn't know whether you looked at me, and I that was the cue.
I was trying to, well, I can't.
Oh, you were
turn
looking at the
around.
monitor, right?
I think there was one other that I was just going to say, a recent funding with the Elton John Foundation, which was about, I did a story about children. I was covert, and it was very difficult to get it, because I went to 25 different schools in Tanzania. Children there who are HIV positive are forced to wear a red badge, like an epaulet, sewn on their school uniforms, identifying them as being HIV positive, which for me is a complete compromise of their rights. And the children have no idea why they're wearing it. They just know, well, I'm sick, I have a falling down disease, and so on and so forth. And it's a terrible thing, and their dignity is compromised. They're totally isolated. They can't participate in sports. They can't participate in anything. Do we have any to pick the... Oh, you did it already? Oh, there you are. I wasn't watching. And this story I had sent to the Elton John Foundation last year for World AIDS Day, and they called me up immediately and said, we want to do more work on this, and we want to run this story. And it was, if I hadn't been there and observed that, it wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't have gotten support and further monies to carry on with the kind of work that I'm doing there. I think that's it.
Thank you, Carol. Right. Oh, I've got to stand up. What we're going to do now is, as Astrid said, this is about not us sitting up here just now talking to you lot, and you lot just sitting there looking at us with blank faces. The idea is that we open this up for questions, and if people have something to say in answer to some of the questions that we don't know, because it may well be that there are people here that do, that's also the idea is. So it's really an open discussion now. We're not just going to sit up here and all be chatting now. So the first thing is, before I say anything else, does anybody have any questions so far? Super. I can see we've enthused everybody. Okay, so if I start with the idea of this project then, or this talk was to talk about funding. So I imagine that people have come here because they want to know how they get funding for a project that they might want to do, a photographic project that they've got in mind, or a book project that they want to produce, and how do they go about this? So if that's the question we're asking, does anybody have any questions for that? If not, I'll ask one of the panel a question. So I'm going to throw it back out one last time in the vain hope that somebody's going to chip in. So do we have any questions to do with anything so far? Super. Oh yeah, Facebook. We have a young lady called Bree, who's where? Oh, Cecily. Sorry, is it Bree? No, Cecily. Who? She's going to read a question, and then we're going to pose it out. Do you want this?
Yeah, sure. And I've been working on a long-term project for the past 6 years. I have a great portfolio of work which has been self-financed. To continue this project, I need funding or sponsorship. My concern and question is there a way to avoid an organisation or publisher that you approach stealing your idea and sending their in-house photographer, and that's off Facebook?
Well, right off the bat, if you're worried about somebody stealing your idea, then you're not going to go anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, it's your idea, so go do it. Everybody has authorship and ownership of their own ideas, their own pictures, their own work. So it's yours, own it, send it in. Don't worry about what other people are going to think about it. That's the problem I find when I do give the workshop. Some of the questions, and a couple of the questions that people always ask me is, well, what will the jury think? And what will other people, what do they want? See, don't care what they want. Give them what you want. Give them what you do. You might not win it, but who cares? There's another one around. So for me, it's just about having the ownership of authorship, so to speak. It sounds kind of lame, but that's what it's about, is owning your work and owning your ideas and submitting it and having belief in that the work is the best work there is. So that's my answer.
Laura, I'm going to ask you, do you have anything to add to that?
I think
Put you on the spot, haven't I?
Dun, dun, dun. I think Simon Roberts gave me some great advice once, and I said to him, oh, I don't know if to pursue this, and I don't know if to do this project. It just feels like it's all been done before, and it's all unique. Nothing's unique and nothing's new. And he just said to me, just do it anyway, because you're doing it because you're enjoying it, and you're doing it because you love it. And he said to me, don't bother hiding it. At the end of the day, if you've done it, just put it out there. It's you, it's your statement. And I still find it really, what I really enjoyed about university is that you just take one topic, and it could be anything, like AIDS in Rwanda, and I don't know, the idea of innocence, and you're all given that topic. And 30 different students would just do something so differently. So I think that worrying that your idea will be stolen by somebody else is kind of not a problem, because they'll shoot it in a completely different way. So
I think what the lady was talking about is if she went to a publisher, they would see the idea, and what they might think is, well, what we'll do, we'll get one of a photographer that I know, and they'll go and do the project. But the question was that this person had been doing it for 6 years, and for a photographer to do 6 years worth of work and try and get the insight and the trust that these other photographers had, it's just not going to work. So they really should do the work that the photographer has taken. So, but you can't take loads of pictures and have a project you're passionate about and then just keep it under your bed and not show anybody. The idea is it has to be seen, so you're going to have to put it out there. So Donald's completely right. You've just got to go for it. And I'm just going to cough. Got it. Right. Before I go on to the next thing, does anybody have any questions again, or are we going to just, we're going to sit in silence? I'm going to throw it out. There's a lady over there. So do you have a microphone? If you can ask your question.
I don't want to sound stupid, but I do art photography, so I don't know how that would go into it. And I want to make a book, but it doesn't go to an audience apart from anyone who likes my work, I guess, or likes visual pictures. because it has no story behind it like that.
I think Carol's put her hand up. And by the way, it's not a stupid question because, you know, if I was sitting in the audience, I wouldn't ask anything, so I'd be too embarrassed. So well done. Did you put your hand up to answer that one,
Yeah,
Carol?
I was
All
just
right.
going to say, the most important thing is if you believe in your idea, you say you're a fine art photographer, and we might be photojournalists or whatever you want to call us. I think the most important thing, if you're taking pleasure and you think it has an artistic value, after that, you have to also ask yourself a very acid question, which is basically, who else would be interested that I could share this with? Who would appreciate and respect the kind of creative work that I'm doing? And that's really important because at the end of the day, publishers will say to you, who's the audience? Who is the target audience? Who's going to buy this book? Why do they want this book? What makes this book special? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else, from the pack? And whether you're a fine art photographer or you're a political photographer or a war photographer, how you approach that, how you put your body of work together, how you organize it, and the story behind it is all part of the package of how you're going to position and get it out there. But the most important thing is to have in your own mind, when you're talking to a publisher or to other people that are going to fund, they're going to ask you, here's the money. Why should I support this project? And you should be able to respond to that in a very sincere and a way that is convincing, is my thought.
Very good thought. Donald, you've published a book with, what was the name of the publisher?
Schild.
I always get that word wrong.
Schild.
Thank you.
Dutch. I don't know.
Yeah, that's all right. What was your experience publishing with them?
Well, I was just going to say, if you believe that just because you're a fine art project and you're not saying anything, then that's actually kind of bad photography. I hate to say it, but every photographer has something to say. We just have a different way of saying it. William Eggleston or Thomas Ruff or Andre Cortez, you know, I could list off an infinite amount of photographers, regardless of what genre they come from, they're still communicating, they're still saying something. It's just a different way of doing it. So now, to answer the question about publishing, well, the dirty secret in photo book publishing, I think there's only like one photo book publisher left, maybe two, that will actually pay you to do your book. Normally, you have to come with money to get your book published. Steidl and Feiden are probably the two last ones left who will actually pay for the production of your book. Nobody knows about that. Nobody likes to talk about that. So I'll gladly say that, yeah, I had to find money for this. If you have Aperture publishes your book, you go with Aperture, you go in New York swan circles at dinners, and you have to sort of present yourself with the artist and say, this is my work, this is what it's about. Now we need to fundraise and come up with $20,000 to publish a book. That's what a book is going to cost you, $15,000 to $20,000. So where's that money going to come from? You need to figure out a way to come up with that money. And that's one thing that people don't talk about in publishing anymore. I think it's very, very, very rare that a photographer has actually had a book published and, you know, been given an advance to go do that book. That doesn't happen anymore. It's dead. It's over. Maybe Steidl and Feiden, as I say, that's it. So it's kind of, sorry to be so blunt about it, but it is a reality. But it's a truthful reality. And usually what happens is you do get support. Aperture is very good. They say, these are the amount of books that we're going to publish this year. This is how we're going to fund it. You as the artist now need to go out and present yourself, present your work, and tell people why you're a good artist, why you're a good photographer, and why this book needs to be made. So sort of something that I was reiterating earlier is that for me, part of the reason why I like to do grants is that it forces me to think about who I am and what I'm trying to say as a photographer.
And I think also grants, as you said, puts a deadline on you, because we can sit there procrastinating for 5 years with our masterpiece and it still sits under the bed, whereas a grant may force you to actually go out there and you know, get to that point where you do apply for something.
Yeah, and the lucky bonus is you get a check.
Yes. The other thing is when people do projects and they self-fund it, they may spend, I did a book with a photographer that I know he spent £20,000 of his own money on 27 different trips abroad to a specific place to do the pictures. He shot 2,500 5.4 trannies to do it, and that was just the cost purely of the processing, the film, and the travelling. And then, you know, then what's he going to do? He wants to have a book. So a lot of people may have got to spend a lot of money getting to the point where they've got a body of work that they want to publish, and the next thing is, well, how do I get the money? That was an open-ended question, actually. I didn't necessarily have an answer, because I was just... Donald,
There was a question in the audience.
was there? Who's got a
Somebody back
question?
there had it.
There's a chap there with his hand up.
My name is Michael. Just having recently done a project, I found that access is everything, and I'd like to agree with the panelists and everyone that once you have the access and once you're able to kind of take that and kind of develop that into trust and confidence and everything else follows. But sometimes getting that access is impossible, and I've had 2 people this week come to me and say, how do you get that? How do you get that access? And that's something I can't explain. It's an unknown, and you either kind of get it or you don't, and that either kind of makes you or doesn't, and that's the kind of tricky thing. But how do you take it further into publishing?
Right, well, there's two things we're going to do quickly. One is you're going to you hold the mic close to your mouth and don't move your arms about. The second thing is you just do yours in one sentence now. Your question is about access, isn't it? What's the question?
Access is everything.
Access is everything. So is that like a statement you're saying that access is everything, or is it a question?
It's a statement,
Yeah.
But then following on from that, it's about trust and confidence, and then everything else follows from there.
Well, again, this is, I mean, what you're talking about is what Carol and Laura do, and in fact, Donna do is this thing where they go and do projects, and they spend a long time getting to know the people. So it's this thing of, it's not editorial where you go and you're assigned to see somebody, you take a picture, and at the end of the day you get paid. These are projects that these people, or we feel passionate and committed to, and then by spending time with people, of course, they start to trust you, and then they allow you into their lives, and then you get pictures, and you see things that you don't ordinarily see. And that moves on to the next level. There's a lady in front with her hand up. He's going to pass you the mic.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Anastasia. Just
Hi.
leading on from that question, actually, I just wondered, Don, if you could tell us a little bit about getting access specifically for your project, Interrogations, and for the book, because I mean, it's important that we pick it out now in relation to that question because it's quite extraordinary, and I think there's probably an interesting story to be had there.
Is that a little off topic?
No.
Access? No. We're talking about access.
Access got me the photographs. Oh, no, you're right. Okay, it makes sense. I was going to say, Access got me the photographs, and photographs got me the publishing deal. So, yeah, it's a totally relevant question. Sorry.
Well worked out, Donald.
Well, okay, how did I get access? It's a long story, so I'll try to condense it down to an abbreviated version. My very first trip to Ukraine in 2004, I was lucky enough to meet somebody who introduced me to a policeman that ended up becoming my confidant over the next 7 years. And he was my main access to the police and the police station that I worked with. But just because you have access to somebody, it's up to you then to what are you going to do with that access and how are you going to use it. There's many times I've been given access, but I've screwed it up somehow, and maybe my mannerisms or something, my bad jokes have gone against me. It's sort of fostering a relationship, knowing that it's kind of the long game, I guess is how you could describe it, is that you have to see something not as immediate, but as a long-term goal. And that just is not just about access or making photography, it's sort of about everything that you do. I'm lucky, you know, Stuart said I trained as an architect. I worked for Rum Koolhaus for almost 4 years in the late 90s. And it was a horrible place, but it was also an incredible place because what he taught me was you have to not look, when is this project going to be done, but you have to look, in his case, he was talking about a 30, 40-year arc of what he's doing. So in that case, when I kind of had that epiphany that it's not about what is this guy going to do for me right now, but how can I don't like to use the word use because it connotates something, but what is going to happen to us as a relationship, you know, further down the road, and hopefully it bears fruit. And I don't want it to sound cynical, like I was just friends with a policeman just because he was a policeman and I thought I could get access into something, but it just kind of becomes a gray area of actually, I hate to say it, but enjoying somebody's company and wanting to be a part of them. So often I find in my travels and such where I've been, my photography, it's not necessarily about the picture, but people will let you into their lives, will let you into their place if you genuinely want to be there. I've had many people say, "You really want to hear my story?" I said, "I want to hear your story." And that to me is the most interesting thing. I don't really care about the pictures and such. What I care about is being somewhere in a place that I shouldn't be, but somebody has granted me permission to be and to share their life with you. And as soon as that sharing happens, then anything can happen. You can photograph anything. It's just about having an open relationship and an open bond, I guess, with the person it is that can help you further.
But tell us a story.
No, not really a story. It's drinking. Well, it's kind of, Carol Ann sort of, she was talking about an anorexic chicken. It is not being afraid of being, here we are up on a stage. I'm higher than you right now. I would never do that when I'm working.
Exactly.
It's somebody offers me a bowl of soup. Like, I'm allergic to fish. I'll probably, I have a severe allergy to fish, but people will offer me, like, eat some fish. And I think, I have to eat the fish. I have my EpiPen with me, and I'm ready to stab myself with it, but I'll take that little bit of fish because it's about showing that you have a commonality with them.
Do you think also, sorry, can I start? Do you think also that access is down to instinct as well? Like, for example, sometimes, like you said, like you meet somebody and you kind of, you're confused by whether, like, where it's going to go, like how that relationship's going to flourish and the blurred line between kind of subject and friend or kind of, enjoying their company.
Yeah.
Do you kind of just go with your instincts and think,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to see where it rolls, and
I think instinct is the most important tool a photographer can have. You have to trust yourself and trust that what you're doing is you're going down the right way. When I met Igor, the policeman, in 2004, I had no idea that this is going to be the result of it. There was something engaging. He was a character. He was a personality. And I genuinely enjoyed his company. And as we got to know each other, he grew in his role. He started off as a junior lieutenant, and by the time 7 years later, he became a major. So these things sort of evolve in front of you, but it's the instinct of knowing when a person or a character is worthy to be with. Sometimes, I meet somebody that I think, I hope, I pray that is going to work out for me in terms of helping me with access, but it's not going to happen. Sometimes you just got to say, I'm going to move on.
We haven't talked about one, I think, a really important person, at least that has assisted me in access when I'm working in a developing world and I'm dealing with a lot of different languages, and particularly in Africa, and that's having a really good fixer. Someone that is sympathetic to what you want to do in terms of telling the kind of story and design, and being able to open up the doors, introducing you to the reverend, introducing you to family, saying, I know this person. You can trust them. They're going to do this and that. And there's 3 fixers that I now have been working with for the last 5-6 years. And they normally email me. They give me updates on how things are happening. And Carol, you went to the field, like the whole story about the children wearing the red badges, for example. My fixer in the field, who's a very bright guy, and he does, he takes a sabbatical to work with me when I come to the country. And there's another gal that's a volunteer at a local charity. She actually went out 1 month before I got there and went to all these schools and talked to the head, saying, Carol's coming back, you know who she is, you know the kind of work that she makes. She wants to be able to help these children. And then I have unfettered access because the development work has been done. You have to start building relationships with these people, and the relationships I have with a lot of the people where I work is so strong, it's so powerful that I can just, send an email or text and say, can you help? And the next thing you know, it's full on in giving you that kind of support. So it's important to develop local relationships to get that access if you want to continue the kind of storytelling that you're doing and you're very focused on the kind of a story that you want to tell. I think that's important.
But I think the question is why? Why do people want to help you?
Well, I think the reason what I normally have done when I first started out doing this, being a complete novice, knowing nothing except instinct, is that I really wanted to help people, particularly for what I call my Angels Project, that are suffering from HIV/AIDS, particularly the women, and particularly the children, and the orphans living rough on the street. And the fixers, and some of like one of the families that I virtually was living with for over a month in Rwanda, they were the ones that introduced me to other people, and they say, well, why do you want to do this? And I say, look, I can't promise you, I'm not famous. I know nobody knows who I am. All I can say is I will try my best to tell you a story, what you're trying to do in your lives, how you're trying to reconstruct your world after having the HIV/AIDS virus. When I first started doing this project, for example, you had to wait 3 months to get a result of an HIV test. Now it takes 15 minutes. So all the kind of tension and exploitation starts to be diminished somewhat as people get more confident about what the outcome is going to be. And I also, whenever I take pictures, wherever I have been, people always promise to give you pictures, and they never do. I have always come back, not just with the pictures that I've made that I thought they would like to have, but I actually, because some of them are living rough, especially a story I did about these kids living rough in the bush, and I laminate the pictures because I know they're living rough, they're living in extreme conditions so that they have something. And if I make a promise, they know they can trust me that I'm going to fulfill that promise. That's the most important thing. So many times people come in with fact-finding trips and all the rest. Oh, I'll send you a picture, I'm going to do this. I never say anything that I can't actually fulfill. And from there builds even a greater trust in being able to go back again and again. They say, it's not like, oh no, she's here again, she hasn't done a goddamn thing, and who wants to see her face? Even if I haven't been able to get a story published in a significant way to give them support or raise funding, they know that I've tried. And in one case, just as an example, of these kids living rough, a retired reverend from this country saw the story. He asked me if he could use my pictures for his website. They did. They raised £48,000 to build a youth hostel for these children. It took 18 months to do it. We had a big exhibition up in Kendall. And that's what a picture can do. I don't take anything for that. But it was the ability to tell the story and the access I had with these children, living rough, very young children, young as 6, 7, 8 years old. And now they have some place to live, and they have a skill center as well, based on some pictures.
Right, I think some people have got their hands up. We'll go to one of them in a minute. I saw a question up there I just wanted to say, which was from Ricardo, which said, is photography a language? The answer is yes. If we can go on to the next question. So we'll go to the gentleman in the front there.
Can I just ask what the general expectation is from the people that give out the grants to yourselves when you actually approach them for funding for a project? I mean, what are they hoping to get out of it? Are they looking for exhibitions? Are they looking for you to do a book? Do they want to keep some of the material for their own libraries for usage? So what's the general kind of deal that's done?
It's all over the map. It really depends. I got a Guggenheim Fellowship, and all they wanted me to do was grow as an artist. That's it. I didn't have to give them prints, nothing. In fact, they gave me money to do my book.
We love that.
So that's a nice thing. Sometimes you'll get a grant that they'll ask maybe some prints in return. I got something from the Center for Documentary Studies in North Carolina at Duke University. They wanted 6 prints. The arts councils, again, just make sure you grow as an artist, so to speak.
So to follow on from that, do you find then that when you approach an organisation for funding, they want to see your abilities as a photographer, first of all, to see that if they give you a grant and know that your passion is there, that your motivation is going to carry the pictures through for it to be seen on its widest audience. So it's going to perpetuate the...
There's sort of like, that's sort of a two-pronged thing. There are grants, say like Guggenheim, that says by December 1st, send in your application. This is who we are, this is what we do, this is how much money we'll give you, and this is what we expect in return. So on that level, it's transactional. You give me money and I'm going to go do this, and regardless of what the outcome is. Now, on the other hand, if I have a project, here it is, I knock on a door, I say, I'm Donald Weber, I'm a photographer, I think my project is in simpatico with your ideas, then I need to actually present something to them. And from my understanding, from my experience, it's about eyeballs. People want to see what it is that they have a mission about. So if I can say to them, I'll guarantee you, 500,000 people will come to an exhibition, we'll do a book, it'll be a website, blah, 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 all this kind of thing. You have to be able to give a doable, a conceivable plan for them. Because that's what they're interested in.
Presumably, as you go through your projects, as your projects develop and you're successful at projects, you'll probably find that exhibitions and books start to build and grow with your reputation and with your abilities to shoot.
It's nice because it builds your credibility, right? So I can say I'm a published author, or I've had exhibitions in X, Y, and Z place, so I have a proven track record. It doesn't say that you have to have a proven track record to do something. You just have to have a good idea. You have to be clear. You have to be articulate about that idea, and you have to build partnerships. And it's not usually just going to be you and somebody else. It's not like a 1 + 1 equation. Usually there are many multiple partners involved in that. For instance, I can say I'm lucky enough, I've got an agency 7, and I've said this at our annual meeting in May. I don't know if Anastasia's heard it or not, but I say, who cares about $2,000 for a magazine assignment? Give it away to the magazines for free. That way, I can then say to somebody else, give me $200,000, because I will guarantee you that the New Yorker or Time Magazine or New York Times Magazine, whatever it is, Sunday Telegraph Magazine, they're going to run this work. And they have a circulation of, I don't know, a couple of million. So right off the bat, I've guaranteed you 2 million people. Then I can say to somebody else, this is going to be in the New Yorker magazine with a circulation of 2 million people. So now we're going to make some, I don't know, some kind of digital or web component. And maybe I find, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but some kind of HP to say, okay, now you're going to host my project on your web service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all they're really kind of looking at is a number of eyeballs to look at their, like, why is WPO doing this today? You see their logo everywhere, right? The World Photography Organization. Who's it sponsored by?
Steady, Donald.
Sony, right? Sony. So we're all talking about Sony and Sony cameras, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that in a bad way or a cynical way. It's actually a very clever way. So instead of Sony having an advertising about a camera, what are we doing? We're creating a community of photography. It just so happens to be that Sony brings it by. Or even Frontline Club. There it is right there on the Facebook thing. That's all that people are really interested in. Frontline and Sony and WPO got you here today, right? And now what are you going to... How many people here are Frontline Club members? So there's a heck of a lot of you that aren't. Now the next question is, how many are going to become Frontline Club members? You should all raise your hand, right? In other words, that's what it's about. And this is sort of, I think, a successful way of doing something.
Do you think the risk with that, though, is that, like, some people would take advantage? Like I said to a charity recently, I'll get you a major publication, I'll do this, I'll go out there, send me out there, and they did, and I got that, but I got squalor for it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a question to Donald. I was saying that, is there a risk when you do that, if you don't necessarily have a reputation, or maybe you're not approaching a major brand, but you just want access to something that people would say, well, if you can get it published in the Sunday Times, go and do that for us and we'll give you access, we'll do it for free. And then you kind of end up, you're like, damn, I really want to shoot this project, so I'm going to go and do that, but I'm not going to get paid for it. So it's where you're kind of...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes you're fucked.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're successful. I mean, I did something in Kosovo. It was for the, I can never say it, they got to change the name, Organization for Cooperation and Security in Europe, OCC, whatever. And it was in Kosovo. It was 2009, and basically it was a 6-week assignment to go photograph the first independent elections of Kosovo. I thought, great, 6 weeks, $500, $800 a day. I'm going to make a lot of money. Zero. We'll pay for your flight, your hotel, we'll feed you, scrambled eggs every morning. And that's essentially all it was. But I still wanted to do it because I wanted to go to Kosovo. So it was a way for me to get there. So right off the bat, I've already had one, but I'm making zero. And I'm away for 6 weeks. I need to make money. I have rent. I've got things I need to pay for, et cetera, right? So in that way, I thought, well, screw that. I need to find a way to make a little bit of money off of this. Magazines weren't interested in the work, and I don't really care anyways, because the magazine, as I said, is $2,000. So what? It's a flight. So what I ended up doing in that case was the National Library in Pristina, this crazy building I was driving by, and I thought, that's an archive. This is a brand new country. What's the whole point of an archive? It's about history. So I went in there, hello, I'm Don, I'm a photographer. I played up the fact that I was not Kosovar, which is fairly easily because I don't speak the language. So this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what the project's about. Here's my, I made some cheap prints at the local print shop. I gave it to him and I said, you guys should really own these pictures, you know, this is a part of cost of art history. Yeah, we should own some of those pictures. And I ended up selling 12 photographs. It wasn't a lot of money, but in the end
But
it was pretty
I think
good.
that, for me, defines funding, because I don't think it's necessarily about, I don't know, I don't think there's an answer to funding. I don't think there's an answer for projects. I think as photographers, like, fuck it, we'll do, like, if we want to shoot something, we're going to go and shoot it, and we'll find the money, we'll work in a bar, we'll do whatever we want to do. But I think what Donald is saying is that he used his initiative to kind of, like, look at the main question, which is, who does this interest? Who is this going to benefit? Is it going to benefit a museum? Is it going to benefit a world organisation? Is it going to benefit a major brand? And then approaching those people and saying, look, I have something that you might want, and I need some dollar to pay my rent right now, so let's do an exchange. And I think it's like, not just about access. It is also about kind of gaining the funding off the right people. And I guess it's maybe just keeping your eyes and your ears open to kind of, like, everything, not just photography grants and organisations, not just competitions and awards, but, yeah, like, everywhere.
Everything. You never
Well,
know.
it's exploiting opportunities as they arise, as we were talking about earlier. You know, you have to keep your eyes and ears close to the ground and find out what's going on. And if you hadn't walked by that building, you wouldn't have even had that in your plan before you set out.
But you would have
on
found
the
somewhere
flight.
else.
No, but the thing is, that's the idea. You have to be on full-on alert. What is the opportunity? How am I going to get the funding to back this project in some manner or form?
I think, hang on, there's a lot of hands coming up now. See, you're all too late. Look, I've got one of Astrid has a question. Okay, fine. We're good, yeah. Fine, fine. Okay, so can I have the hands again? Sorry, everybody. Let's go to the chap here, seeing as I don't want you to walk too far.
There's been talk of NGO funding, and obviously we're here to talk about funding as well. Trying to say, should I expect, or what ratio of the funding goes towards just the job versus the rent and the bills of my life, and what should I expect? And just
I think it
that's a
depends
sort of
on
open.
your intention and your relationship with them. For example, when I shot my sorry, I just kind of jumped in.
No, go on, Laura.
When I shot for Oxfam, they approached me. So they said to me, we want something a bit different. We like your style. We want something a bit artistic. Let's come up with an idea together. Whereas with World Jewish Relief, I said to them, I have an idea. I want to go to Ukraine. Fly me out there. And they were like, why should we? So I had to shoot an A-roll for them. I had to shoot for their annual report and stuff like that. So I knew that I had to sacrifice that amount of funding, what I would have been paid. So I think it differs for every organisation with regards to what you're being commissioned and what you're asking for.
So is it possible to get funding that will fund your life?
Yeah, because I think, like,
well
Harold
as
said,
just
like,
Well, to give you an idea, there are 4 solo exhibitions. Sorry.
Well, hang on. What did Donald say?
Right. Well, no, hang on. I think we each have different experience, and we should share our experience
Carol's
if everyone's come here.
sleeping at her mum's.
I've had 4 different solo shows on behalf of 4 different international NGOs. And when I've approached them, although one had actually approached me, I actually write a mini marketing plan, no more than, let's say, 3 pages, saying what is the basis of interest, what the assignment is going to be, what are the marketing opportunities? Is it going to be an exhibition? Is it going to be a book? Are we going to have it on the web and with print sales? And most of my exhibitions, at least 2 of them, we raised a significant amount of money on print sales that were done at the exhibition, and also print sales that were then further promoted online for them. So it generated revenue for them, which was the most important thing. When I wrote out the marketing plan, I was saying, this is, aside from the image building and the opportunities you're going to have from a press point of view, we also are looking to reach out for those that have deep pockets and those that have medium pockets, support and sustain the work that you're doing in this category. And it's been success for me. That has worked. So
Did you get much money, Carol?
not a lot.
So really,
But not a lot, but it was the reason I did it initially is, as you know, reinvented myself in terms of what I was doing in my previous life. And I knew I had to establish credibility and authority that I could actually achieve something in some way. So I was paid for doing the work. It wasn't a substantial amount of money, but it was like going to university. I knew I had to do the work, and I was working for big NGOs, so it wasn't like I was working for some under the rock. These are well-known NGOs that are recognized, and the work gets out there, and people can say, well, you know, that is part of your, not beyond a CV. Mostly they benefited from it, and I think that's what was really important at the end of the day for me.
I just like being contrarian. That's why I said no. But it's true.
So argumentative.
It all depends on what you happen to find that day for the funding. Sometimes I take a hit, I get a loss on it. Sometimes I've got a nice, significant grant that actually pays you a living wage. That's the other thing. A lot of grants, it's not for you to live. It's for you to make work. It's expenses only. So where's your life basically there? The Canada Council, I don't know how it works with the British Council. They build in subsistence fund up to $1,200 a month. So who can live off of $1,200 a month here? Not a lot of, oh, that guy can. He's down. Teach us. That's the next WPO conversation. But, you know, still, it might be for 4 or 6 months. So, you know, that's $6,000 right there off the top that you can use for your own personal gain for whatever it is that you need to be. The other thing people don't realize, you got to pay taxes on this.
Oh, yes.
In my case, I have U.S. residency, so I have to report to the IRS and to Canada Revenue. So suddenly I'm paying a heck of a lot of tax on top of that and such.
So when you were disagreeing and you were saying that you can't not make a living, but you can't do both and you can't get a commission, did you mean that you would avoid almost sacrificing your projects and your way of working, like to get paid for it, in a sense?
No.
Sorry, I'm really
the other thing I was going to say is, like, I'm here because I don't do assignments. I actually make a living doing the work that I want to do. How do I make my living? I do my grants. I teach workshops, which hopefully some of you will sign up for. You know, I have an agency that sells my archive. It doesn't make me a lot of money, but it makes a little bit every month. Sometimes I sell prints and such, so it's little bits and pieces that you sort of add it all up. But the significant part of my income is through grants. And that's because I've been successful getting big grants, which pay you a living wage sometimes, and then also supplementing that with smaller grants that allows you to go do the work that you need to go do.
So I guess it's just about time as well, and it's kind of like, because you can't really gain those big grants unless you've grown as a photographer and unless you kind of have that reputation and you have those bodies of work to support you.
I'll counter that as well.
Okay.
I got a Guggenheim Fellowship in 2007, so I applied for that in 2006. At that time, I just coming off of working at a newspaper, a tabloid, sort of the equivalent of The Sun. We didn't pay people off, but well, they maybe did, I don't know. But, you know, it was a crappy newspaper job. And sort of between that and 2006, on my own time, I would just go to Ukraine on my own, purely on my own. I convinced one of the editors to send me during the Orange Revolution in 2004, but I didn't like what I was doing there, so I said, forget it, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm just going to go do what I want to do. That work, you know, I was just there. I saved up money. That was all it was about.
That was all self-funded.
That was all. Everything I've done is self-funded.
Yeah.
And then, so when I applied for my Guggenheim in 2007, I didn't have any major prizes, awards, or a huge body of work. But what I did have was a body of work and an idea that I believed in, because I had committed myself to Russia and Ukraine at that point. I think it was almost 3 years at that time. So I had built up a body of work. And I think I was rewarded because that's all it was. It was work that was rewarded.
So you had like grown as a photographer, even if it wasn't
I had grown
financed
as a
by someone
photographer,
else,
but it
you
wasn't
did do that
because,
time of-
oh, he's from Magnum or whatever
no,
like that,
yeah.
you know?
But
It was
I
a
think
body
like
of
what
work.
we've all kind of like
Yeah, it's a
established,
body of
I
work.
guess, was through
Yeah.
the funding. It is like there isn't an answer, is there? It it's just like you will go out there and make that work, and you have to kind of, like you were saying at the beginning, like.
Well, no, you said it. You said that no matter what happens, you'll go out and you'll take the pictures. If somebody's going to give you the money, that's great, and if they're not, you're still going to do it.
But
So
all
you're
three
right.
of it, yeah, we're
No,
like
though,
that.
that's how you started. So, Carol, the first 4 jobs you've done for your NGOs or for the charities, they paid you hardly any money or just subsistence or the flight. You know, they didn't
Right.
pay you a wage. But now what's happened is you've now, from that, they'll now come to you. You've got a reputation. It's starting to build. But it's the legwork that you put in at the beginning and the fact that you believe in it. You're passionate about the project you want to do.
That's the most important word. It's passion. Without passion, nothing works. You know, I get up in the morning, and I'm sure all of us sitting here, I'm enthused thinking about what I'm going to be doing. I love what I do. I'm prepared to work, you know, a 24/10 day a week just to do the work, because I find my energy is fueled by the passion. And I have been, for the last 5 years, on this one project in Africa. I never tire of it. I never get bored. There's always new ideas that I'm inspired by. And the work has grown, and I've learned from it as well, which is a wonderful thing. Each time you come back, another layer is peeled back that you learn about, and you share it. And it's the passion that you feel about the work. That's what makes it work for the future. And that is also what's going to help you for funding, is that kind of commitment that you're prepared to really do that, even if you don't get the funding. You're going to make the work. You're going to support your project.
Oh, so we were chit-chatting then. We were whispering to each other, so we didn't raise it. We're going to go to a Facebook question. Here you are, Brie.
Cecily.
And this is from Clive Frost. Many photojournalists, do the panel have experience of getting funding from commercial organisations, or is this usually either a dead end or too likely to necessitate selling your soul to get the pennies?
I have an intention before I pursue a project, and sometimes when I'm pursuing a project, it can actually turn people off rather than turn people off. Like, dealing with young naked people has worked against me in many ways. Like, there's a lot of brands that probably would not want to be associated with young British naturists. I don't know. I don't think I'm the answer that one.
You know, a really good example of that, I didn't mind the question till the very last bit. I take offense at the last bit. Like, why is it that we sell our soul if we work for a corporation? I think that's a total bullshit line, but whatever. I think a great example of somebody who's parlayed what they believe in, the work that they love, the work that they want to do, into a commercial career, so to speak, would be Venetia Dearden, who's British. You know, she lives in Somerset. She comes from Somerset. One day she said, I'm going to photograph Somerset. And she just spent a lot of time in her home just photographing the land. And Mulberry, who's also, I guess, a local Somerset company, work and said, you know what, this is a really interesting project. We like your vision, da 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 da. It's something that we want to do as well. So how many books have she done together with Mulberry? 2.
She's also made a film as
and
well.
a film.
And she's really stuck to her own style as well. And I think, like,
That's important.
I guess it's just the confidence. Like, if you are approached by a brand, I don't think it necessarily means that you have to adapt to kind of their needs. Like, they've obviously, I think the biggest kind of compliment is when a brand or a company or a person says to you, be you know, like, do your thing. And like with her, she just stuck to it, and it's worked so well. Like, it's so inspiring.
And when you stick to something that you do, Mulberry went to her because they liked what she does. They're not going to her, we really like what you do. Now you're going to shoot on 8x10 black and white.
Forget it.
You know, they're hiring her, they're using her, they like her, they want to work with her because they believe in what she does, because she believes in what she does. And as soon as you have belief, that's when doors open.
Okay, we've got another question over here.
Hi. Hello? Okay.
Hello.
I went to a WPO talk in April last year, and about an hour and a half of the way into it, I raised this question because nobody had at that time, and now we're 18 months later. Does anybody on the panel have opinions on crowdsourcing, emphasis, Kickstarter, et cetera, et cetera? Because that's been around for a few years now. And I just find it amazing that so far into the conversation. No,
there's like, well, I don't know. There's not a lot.
Kickstarter.
There's not a lot for British, is there?
I just want to know if you had any opinions on those things.
I got an opinion on anything.
We won't ask Donald then. Carol.
I first became familiar with Kickstarter when Peter Dench had approached me to be one of the participants for the book that he finally got published. And of course, I know Peter, and I said, of course I'm going to sign up. And then I investigated because I didn't know too much about Kickstarter. I think it's a very interesting idea. It certainly is very much consistent with what's happening in the world with Facebook and social networking. It's another format, if you will, for social networking, to get something out there where you're sharing in the responsibility, the financial responsibility. But I think it takes a particular personality. I'm lousy at social networking. I can badly twat and whatever. And the idea of asking people for money makes, I can do it on behalf of someone else, but I'm too shy to ask for myself. I just feel like, it's very difficult to do. But it's been very successful for so many people that have used it. And then once you do that, you get yourself published. You can use that as to leverage when you do, let's say, another body of work or want to do it in a different way. You can actually go to a publisher and say, look, this is what I've been able to accomplish. This is what we've gotten out there. This is what is now selling on Amazon. This is the sales for whatever. So it's a way of getting your foot more than a wedge in through the door and having a product that you are going to be in control of from a creative perspective, from what I understand.
What do you think, Donna?
Are you sure you want John to answer this one?
Come on, be a rebel.
Well, I haven't actually done any crowdfunding myself. I think I've thought about it because, hey man, people are going to chip in to do something for me. But I think the danger is, it's kind of, for me, it's only like a once in a lifetime kind of thing, or maybe once every 5 years. Marianne's shaking her head, she says no. But for me, it's sort of like, how many times can I ask my friends to pay for, give me 25 bucks or something like that?
Yeah, that's what I feel.
Forever.
Why, God, really?
That is actually putting himself out there to ask.
Friends, I don't mind. Like, I'll call you up and say, Marianne, it's $100 for you. But for friends and such, yeah. In family, you kind of have like a personal relationship, and I don't mind saying, give me this money. But it kind of, when it goes into the second and the third ring, there's a picture editor at the National Geographic who, without a doubt, she will always spend 25 bucks. No matter who it is. And you go into her place, and it's crammed with prints and books and photos. She's like, oh my God, I just funded another $25. People are constantly coming to me, and I just can't say no. But I think the key...
Who is she, Donald? Just so that
I'm not saying
can,
names. She's going to kill me. She's a very lovely woman, though. She will definitely fund you no matter what. But I think for me, the key is sort of, if you have a project, in recognizing what your project's about and getting it out of the sort of, say, the ghetto of photography, and having it appeal to an audience that is interested in, so for instance, in my case, well, I don't want to use me, it's stupid. Peter DeCampo, I don't know if anybody know him at all. He was working on right now a great project about life without lights in Africa. So it's about electricity poverty. So he's not appealing to you and I as a photographer. He's going to the communities, electricity companies and funds that deal with this sort of situation. And he said his Kickstarter campaign was simple because he managed to recognize who his audience is. And that, I think, is the key right there. And that's just not for Kickstarter, it's for everything. You have to know what your audience is, and then you can fund the money.
There's lots of hands. I want to do the chap there at the back with the glasses, because he's all the way over there, and I thought you needed a little bit of a trip. Thank you.
Hi. I
Hello.
just wanted to chip into the discussion because I always hear photographers saying, my project, and I want to get a bit of money, and I want to get sent this and that, and I want to do this, and I want to publish this. I guess when people are looking for funding, or there's a change of mentality between my project and what I want to do, and turn it into a we kind of thing, and bring the more people you bring in together, and if those people are, NGOs or brands, and if you bring them in to the project and
let them sort of play in the project. That it might be people sometimes follow ideas rather than other people, I guess. So in your experience, if that sort of happened in some kind of moment where you find yourself working with your funders rather than working, or rather than just asking them for money, just bringing them into the project or the idea, I don't know. Sort of a loose question? Do you want
It
me
was
to
slightly loose. I mean, I was struggling. I was thinking, can you paraphrase it in one sentence, just for me?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can sort of answer it as well as a book publisher. Sometimes it'll be better to work with photographers that want to make a collaborative project rather than a, this is my work, my piece.
I think it's all collaborative. I don't think it's when we say we or I, and it's my work. I don't think. I mean, Laura, do you think it's you don't think of the I in it? You're trying to do something that shows the people that you're working with, or you're trying to get something across. It's not about us.
I don't think we're ever working alone. Like, even if it's a lonely project, like, as I think all of us focus on people. So we kind of have to work with people, and we enjoy working with people. And I think
even funders, even the people.
Yeah, of course. Like, and a lot of our projects are with kind of other organisations, and even our subjects. It's all a collaboration. I can't take a portrait without somebody collaborating and somebody working with me. And I think, in actual fact, like, I guess maybe what you're asking and what it comes down to is, are you going to be sacrificing your ideas and your intentions if you're working with somebody else? And I actually think no. I think it gives you the opportunity to ask for somebody else's opinion and ideas and creativity, and you will always work as a team, and you will always come up with ideas. I think it's so dependent on the situation. It's a really open-ended question. It's kind of,
You have to collaborate all the time. Otherwise it doesn't work.
I think all photographers do. Even if they're collaborating with a landscape and they're in the middle of nowhere, they're working with something or with someone.
Okay, so there's a guy over there with his hand up. Can you see him?
Just on that point of collaborating with people, have you ever run into problems where once you've got your funding, you begin to realize that possibly the funding organization doesn't quite square with your broader view? I'm thinking back many, many years now to a show hosted at the Royal College of Art of Lee Miller's photography, and it turned out it was sponsored by Lockheed, who ended up making warheads for nuclear missiles. Is there a point at which you think, okay, it's great that you people have put up the money. Do we have to draw a line here? Because without getting too deep into this, I mean, if you were doing something on HIV/AIDS, could you take something off a Catholic charity that has a big African base, for example?
I think that goes back to what Donald said there about who you're approaching and who your audience is.
I mean, okay, so the
well, the
answer
corporate
would
web is rather sticky nowadays.
Exactly.
Who's Perry Match owned by?
Well, who's Getty owned by?
Precisely.
And
Carlyle Group.
Yeah, Carlyle Group, who, well, as far as I know, are quite scary.
Yeah.
In some way or other,
Yeah,
So, I mean, have you run into this problem yourselves?
I don't think I've personally run into it, but it's a tricky question. Is like it's kind of like how many deaths are acceptable, right? Collateral damage, and how far down that rabbit hole of corporatization do we stop? Oh, I can do an assignment for Perry Match, and I'm against war, but they're owned by EADS, which is the largest defense manufacturer in Europe.
In the world.
Yeah.
In the world, which makes bombs, which kill people, which then you go photograph. But then again, in the same sense, I mean, there is a fallible sense of humanity that we have, and at what point can you live a completely idealistic life, I guess. Yeah. But it's also being smart and sort of knowing who your partners are and going after them. And
so it comes down to your research in the first instance.
I think research and your own moral obligations to.
I think the moral obligation is one of the one that kicks in most. Yeah. There was a photographer I was working with called Gideon Mendel, who was telling me he does a lot of work with HIV/AIDS, and he was telling me he had a 20 grand tax bill to pay, and he'd just been offered a job with a pharmaceutical company, and that would have paid his tax bill, but he couldn't take it because it conflicted with his interests of what he was doing. So it comes down to you as a person, as what you feel you can and cannot do. And if you're doing something which is about AIDS and that you're trying to get something across there, I think your own moral standpoint jumps in, and that's where things happen.
Thank
Yeah, there's just a quick anecdote. I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but there's a certain very large pharmaceutical company in this world that obviously is selling their pharmaceutical things to developing nations, and MSF, I know, takes great slight against anybody who works for this company. And even though this assignment that they have, which is a yearly thing, and a lot of the top photographers have done it, and it's actually an ethical, it's not an annual report about their company and how great they are, it's just sort of a corporate report to highlight underreported health stories around the world. But it's $250,000 in fees, by the way, for a year's worth of work. But if MSF knows you've done work for this company, you'll never work for them again. So
But I think Sue said the most important thing. It's an ethical decision. You know, certainly for myself, and I think Laura as well, the organizations that I've worked for, I've actually admired the work that they do. And that's the reason I wanted to be associated with them, and why that I have undertaken work for them, because there was a simpatico in terms of their ethics, their aims, what they were trying to do and achieve. And some are better than others. This is absolutely the truth. But and it's also the people you work with whatever organization. But the first step, what is absolutely correct, is the research. You know what, let's say, an Amnesty International stands for, and you know what their reputation is. You know what Save the Children do, and so on. So you have a perspective, and then you can go deeper into it. But if you actually respect their work, and you think they have ethics and morals, and that's the kind of work that you want to undertake, that's the most important thing. I mean, we are all selective in our work. I wouldn't work with someone that I didn't respect or I felt was amoral. No matter, even if I was starving and had to be a middle-aged hooker on Piccadilly, I would rather take a middle-aged hooker on Piccadilly than work for someone unethical.
Well, that's a very good note there, Carol. I'm going to pass it back now to Cecily. Stop it. There's a question on Facebook.
And this is from Ambra Vanuccio. Would an interactive digital photo project be easier to fund or more interesting compared to a traditional project?
Interactive, eh?
Ooh. Can't do Facebook, so...
Well, it's what they're saying is interactive. Is it something, because you talked about, Laura, somebody doing a film, this person. So, yeah. So, sorry, what was the question again?
is interactive more fundable? You know what's fundable? Eyeballs. That's all that the funder wants. They want people to engage in the work. So if it's a book, an exhibition, a bunch of flyers thrown out of an airplane, whatever it is, as long as you can reach an audience, that's what it's about.
Okay. All right. Well, we've come here to talk about funding. Is there a question out there that we haven't addressed up here that somebody wants to ask about funding that we feel... I'm going to pass... this is the microphone I've been using, so be careful.
Just a quick question. Are there any rules on sort of fundings overlapping? And if you get one, does it mean you can't get another? And also, are there any restrictions on how much can you make profit on something that was funded? Or let's say if expenses were covered, can you then sell it or make some money on it in some ways? Are there any restrictions on that?
Laura, is the question, so if you've been paid money to do something by an organisation, it's your money, you're allowed to do whatever you will. So if you do just shoot 3 rolls and say, there are your pictures and that's it, then you can walk away from that, can't you?
I think, I guess what you're referring to is more kind of like what you're saying, like grants and applications, and I guess that will come down to their own terms and conditions and their rules. And most of them, if you have any questions, you can always ask them, but I guess there's certain things that are questions that some people don't know if to put in. For example, do you budget into your budget R&D time, research and development time, shoot time, your own fee, those kind of things. And I guess I think some people when they're applying for funding, they don't put those things in because they're wary that they might not get the grant if they put in 6 days of R&D time for yourself. And I think that just comes down to each individual one. I mean, Donald, you probably know more about kind of how they, I don't know if they overlap or if those kind of rules and regulations, but I imagine it's just down to kind of each terms and conditions. Whereas if it was a commission, if like you were working with a collaboration, it was A roll, B roll, I think you just have to be really clear like what you're doing for them and what you're doing for yourself. Well, I think like with every company, with every grant, with everyone, you have to send a budget breakdown and estimate anyway, and you have to get that signed off. So my advice would always be to like over expense it very slightly so that you're not in the shit when you get it. Like for example, you know, make sure that you really think about everything, your travel time, you know, like I remember when I was going to Ukraine, I was taking a writer with me and we were both really, really broke at the time and we were sorting out the budget and we were even writing down things like, okay, we need to make this amount because I can't afford the quid for the trolley at the airport, can you? No, me neither. So like we were kind of just really working out every single fine point and it wasn't down to making a profit, that wasn't our intention, it was just to make sure that we weren't losing any money when we were doing it. So I think it's just about being really vigilant with your budgeting and your grants, and I think that the applications, a lot of that is just down to like analness when you're figuring it out and really breaking down what you need. And I think that also like just things like receipts and getting estimates from printing and processing and scanning places and figuring out how much time it's going to take you, how many rolls of film. But yeah, Donald, do you want to know more about T&Cs and...
Budget is essential, and Laura is absolutely right. Most people under budget, and that is really a strategic error that you make in going in for a grant application, almost anything. Lay out exactly what you think you're going to spend, and if you don't know, research it and get the right answers for that. Otherwise, you're going to be seriously out of pocket and disappointed and chasing money. You want everyone to know up front what it's going to cost, not after the fact and say, oh, by the way, I spent an additional XYZ. That's dangerous. Your budgets are really important, and make sure that they're as good as you can possibly get them. Would you agree, Donald, on that? Or you don't think it's relevant?
Be controversial, disagree with everything.
I disagree.
You disagree?
No. No, it's true, but there's a but. It depends like who you're asking money for, right? Like sometimes you've got to lay out. I did something with an NGO and I had to, you know, pretty much budget my pencils and everything down to the final number. And if I didn't have that, if the receipt didn't match the number in the budget, they wouldn't give me the difference. And if I was over, they wouldn't give me the money. And if I was under, that would be the money that they gave me. So yeah, sometimes budgeting is really important. But at other times, for instance, when I did my Guggenheim, the budget is like 4 lines. How many months? 12. How much do you want? $52,000. Okay. If you start putting in there, I'm going to buy a new camera with this, and oh, I need flash cards, a battery, and I got to have a new bag, I need a jacket, socks, shoes, they're going to say, no. Sometimes you can over budget, you can over inform.
Why would they say no?
Because that's not what that's why it's my rule when I'm doing budgets is to not under budget, but under present what it is that I'm actually asking for. Because if I put down, well, I need a special pair of shoes because it's England and it rains every day, that's not what they're funding. They're funding you to make work, perhaps. And it might just be them to say, you're just giving them ammunition to say no. So usually when you under-inform, it's less stuff for them to take away.
So would you say keep it really basic, like if you're doing your application, just put down the things that are very relevant. For example, your film and processing cost, your printing cost.
And
I mean, for instance, I know the Canada Council. It's very simple. It's something like it's broken up into 2: expenses, revenue. Expenses. It says your subsistence costs. It says travel, research, and something else cost. There's most grants will never fund you for a capital cost. So if you list that you need to buy a camera, you're not getting the grant, you're gone. So you don't list that. There's another line, and then of course there's other, where it says specify. That's where I'll put something like, maybe I'm working in a foreign country and I need a translator. I'll just put translator, $1,500, done. You know, I get scared. I've gotten back the disqualification letter on thick paper that says, you did this wrong. So I've learned my lesson. I've been slapped a few times. So you just have to look at the application. They're very explicit what they want.
Yes,
don't give them more and don't give them less. Give them exactly what they ask for. You're done.
You can.
Has anyone had any controversial ways of funding projects?
Arms manufacturers? Come to you?
Yeah, like anything different.
There's a chap over there in the corner. Do you want to get the microphone so we all can hear, mate?
Sorry, Laura, I'm not answering your question. I'm asking another
fine.
question to do with what you said, Donald. And but please help me, because I was really disheartened and a bit confused about it. But one of the guys at Seven Agency, is it Seven Agency that you're with? Yeah. I don't know the full stories, I might be wrong, but I understand he was a war photographer. Hey?
I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, cool. Help me, because I don't get it. It broke my heart. So the story is this war photographer went out and however many years doing it, really well respected. And then he sold an image to Lockheed Martin, and they used it as advertising.
I'll correct
And-
that.
Yeah, help me, yeah.
You're vaguely right, and you're incredibly wrong on both levels. Basically, he shot some photographs, Anastasia, I don't know if you can help me out on this one too. He shot some photographs in Iraq for his own work. I think some of it was actually for People magazine, and through his commercial agent, not through Seven, he's got a separate agent which is commercial, represents him commercial. An advertising agency bought that work not for Lockheed Martin, but it was, well, some of it was for Lockheed Martin, but other work was for the USO. What is the USO? You know, the dancing bands, the girls, woo, for the soldiers.
It's an American...
An internal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it wasn't like, here's Lockheed Martin selling Zyklon B and Ron selling photographs to it. There was an issue of transparency that, yeah, I mean, he didn't quite clarify his stance, I think, well enough. But, I mean, that's kind of the murky thing, right? You take a picture, and photographers are control freaks, but you can't control where your pictures end up, really, unless you keep them in boxes and you have people knock on your little attic door to say, can I have this picture now? Especially now in a digital age, it's amazing. I mean, I've found photographs of mine in places that I never could expect. So you have to be hyper-vigilant, and I think in this case, Ron wasn't hyper-vigilant about where his pictures end up. Somebody just so happened to, I don't know, seemed to me like a bit of a witch hunt. Let's try to fuck somebody here, but that's my personal opinion. But yeah, it's about vigilance and sort of understanding. And then also, you know, if you have a public persona that I'm a war photographer and I don't believe in war and I think war is bad, then you've got to be not just vigilant, but hyper-vigilant about where those pictures are going. In my agency, we have a little thing in the metadata. There's pictures in this book, I'll say they're not for commercial use. You're not allowed to use it. So it's just my little thing in there that says, so when a picture editor downloads that photo, it says you can't use this picture either without my express permission, so I want to know where it goes, or you can't use it at all. So there are little ways that you can control, but what's stopping somebody from just downloading a picture nowadays? So
They wouldn't use it for advertising. On that same tip, help me, you've really helped me there. I was broken-hearted. There's something else. James Naughty.
don't be too broken-hearted.
I gutted. But
Don't be gutted. Re-gut.
Okay, out, in, okay. James Naughty did a shoot for Vogue, President Assad and his wife. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know much about that, so I can't really offer. And I guess at this time, his wife was sort of seen as a luminary of the world, right?
She was at the time.
Now, yeah.
Now she's...
I mean, at the time, she was
plague.
like... Yeah, at the time, she was sort of talking about human rights and being, you know, I'm the queen who believes in love. But people change, I guess, and I don't think we can fault... I mean, Syria's not exactly been the most friendly of regimes in the last X amount of years, right? But
I think you're right on that point there, Donald. Astrid, I just wonder, what time is it? How are we doing? We're past time. So I was going to ask one more question from the floor, and then what we're going to do is just sum up and see if we've answered the questions, because we've talked about a couple of things which I think I can list off on my two fingers. But let's have one question from the guy over there with his hand up, and then we'll just go and we'll sort of see if we can sum up.
Hello.
Hello.
I had a great question about whether the market's changed from the general public wanting these kind of photojournalism images to NGOs, etc., wanting to show them and using them more as advertising. But I've decided to supersede that question by asking, what happens to Laura's B-roll?
your B-roll, or when you take some pictures, you go out and you do your A-roll, and then there's the B-roll. What happens
Depends
to
which
that?
one's which.
Well, the A roll is the one that's, let's call it the advertising. So you go out for Oxfam, they say, do the annual report stuff, do the stuff which shows our work, shows the improvement, etc., etc. But you also now do your own work. So the kind of traditional photojournalism, which is what the photographer wants to show, still lives. But how does that gain its own momentum? Where does that go? How does that get out to the public domain, etc.?
It doesn't. Like, I don't know, like, I'm very early on in what I'm doing photography-wise, and for me, a lot of the time, my intention when I'm pursuing a project, especially the early stages, is just because I quite enjoy pressing the shutter and meeting people and enjoy making images and growing as a photographer. And I would say that, like, with my YBM project, 2 years of that project will never be seen. And it doesn't need to be seen. It was just about, like, I don't have permission to show those pictures. It wasn't, you know, it was just about kind of learning about what I want to do, and it was research time. With shorter assignments and things like that, I guess I can't predict. Like, that's one massive problem that I really have with projects, actually, is especially from subjects when they turn around, and this is massive in funding, especially when people say to you, so what are your intentions, and what do you want to do with this work, and is it going to be published, and is it going to be this? And, like, to be completely honest, I am just an idiot in those situations, because I just go, I really don't know. Like, I have no idea or no intention. It's just, I just want to do it. I've just got a feeling that I want to do this project. It interests me. And I think, like, just taking it back to the whole funding thing, like what Donald's saying was about, you know, applying for funding, is that you actually do have to sit down and think to yourself, like, well, what are my intentions here, and what do I want out of this project, and kind of like, what am I looking at and what am I interested in? So I would say that my B-roll is, in longer term projects, it's under my bed and I just learn from it and sometimes cringe at it. And sometimes it develops into a project, and sometimes it will be seen in a different context, in the sense that I think it's very easy to pigeonhole certain types of photography. And my photography is quite intuitive, as is like everybody's, I guess. So I guess the audience for that would just be determined by how it develops. And I just, like, for example, with the Save the Children project that we did, it started off and it was meant to be kind of basically just an A-roll mixed in with a B-roll. It was like, we want you to do this because we think it'll be great fun. But off the back of it, we kind of want you to continue with it, and we want it to be your B-roll in the end. And that's, like, that's exactly beautifully how it's happened for all of us. Like, we all kind of knew that we had to go out there and we had to shoot this, but they kind of knew that we would have this other, like, oh, but you're giving us access, and this is an amazing project to be working on. So our B-roll in turn is just something that we're continuing to do, and it will maybe go on our website. We might do, like, a joint exhibition like we've done. We might, you know, do all these different things. And, you know, it's not... I mean, different photographers work in different ways, but for me, my B-roll is my research, and then whatever happens, happens. And I kind of see it as more, it's kind of like sketching and painting and craft. Completely avoided that question, or just babbled on, sorry.
No, you did both. You avoided it and babbled, but very well done. Okay, I think what we're going to do is we're going to wind it up. Do you agree with me, Astrid? Yeah. What I want to do is just so see if what we've talked about, what we've answered in terms of funding, which is that there are grants which one can apply for. There's Kickstarters. There's a thing where you can... Is there anything that anybody else knows in the audience, apart from grants, whether they're NGOs, whether they're charities, or whether they're from the Guggenheim or arts organizations, other grants that, or other ways of funding your project or book projects? I know we haven't mentioned books much at all, but is there anything else other that people know in the audience that, or on the panel that you know of another way, apart from putting your hand in your own pocket? This may not be answered.
The only thing that I could think of is where I had an opportunity to do something on a corporate side, which was to do an installation of work. And it was actually going to the international organization that was providing communications all over the world. And I knew that they bought corporate art and rented corporate art. And I went to them with a presentation and saying, you know, here's my idea. Instead of you're spending £130,000 a year on renting corporate art, why don't you, this is very close, simpatico to the kind of communications you're doing, the stories that you have, and do a corporate installation for a year's worth of work. And they ended up doing that. And also at the end of it, they had an auction with Christie's selling the work where Communications Sans Frontières benefited from it. So it was the short answer is thinking about big companies that may be ethical and close to what you would want to be associated with, to approach them with ideas. But they have to be big and they have to have the budgets to do it. And there are a lot of big, especially in the, I hate to say, the banking industry and so on, that actually invest in art, and their corridors are filled with it. So it's just another way of getting work out there.
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up because I'm a Celebrity. It's going to start soon. So I'm going to hand over to Astrid just to close. I know he did, but no, it's all right. We'll ask him later. Well, we're going to ask him. Astrid.
I'm actually just going to promote another photography event very quickly whilst before we end. One of our partners who's actually here, the Magenta Foundation, Marianne Camilleri, she's come all the way from Canada. The Magenta Foundation is based in Canada and it runs an annual photography awards, which is for UK, US and Canadian photographers. And tomorrow they have come to the UK for the very first time to exhibit a selection of the winners from the 2012 awards. And that's happening at Photo Fusion tomorrow, I think at 7, is that right? And some really fantastic photography there as well. So if everybody wants to go along to that, that's another great thing happening in photography here. Thank you very, very much. And we're actually going to go online on Facebook and answer a lot of the questions that came in through Facebook. And I'm sorry if they didn't get answered here, and sorry if your questions in the audience didn't get answered here as well. We might be sticking around a little bit if you want to come and ask us some things. Thank you.
I'll be selling my book.
Oh, yes.
25 euros.
I'm going to be the first to buy your